So just to introduce the presenters, if I could start with Linda.
Thanks, Keith. Hi, my name's Linda Roberts. I'm the Assistant Director for People Performance Innovation at Dacorum Borough Council. I joined around about 2 and a bit years ago with a brief on change and transformation. And I'm here to share our stories about how we're starting to use RPA within the council.
Matt?
Hi everyone, my name's Matt Howard. I head up data science and AI for AWS in healthcare, and I've worked a lot at the interface of robotic process automation and then the subsequent application of AI-based technologies, and we'll talk you through how some of those can work today.
Brilliant. Nico?
Hi everyone, my name is Nico. I'm a senior data scientist working at AWS, and I support public sector organizations across EMEA. I specialize in working backwards from business problems and helping organizations move their research into well-architected solutions in production. Thank you.
Marco?
Hello, hi all. I'm a solution architect with Abouttmpact, RPA and workflow specialist, and I'll be presenting the demo today.
My name's Keith Stagner. I'm your facilitator for today, CEO of T-Impact. Just to tell you a little bit about what we do, T-Impact is digital transformation specialists, been working about 15 years in the space, transforming business operations across a number of industry. Excuse me, over the last 4 or 5 years, we've really been focusing on the public sector. You can see a number of the councils we've worked with, their local councils there on the right, but probably our biggest, our flagship project, probably one that is the most emotional for us, is work we've done with the NHS with organ transplant. So every heart, liver, lung, pancreas that is received for transplant patients in the UK, it's our software solution that decides who gets it. It's a life or death decision, so it has to be accurate, and also manages a patient pathway up to the time of the transplant operation. Our key area where we specialize in is we bring together process redesign and technology under the auspices of digital transformation, and really focusing on leveraging some of the more advanced technologies around workflow, robotics, and artificial intelligence. So I wanted to start off with a very simple diagram. Why should you be working with on automated service provisioning now? When we speak to customers, particularly in local councils and also in healthcare, they typically are able to, there's a pattern to how people are categorized the work that their teams do. The vast majority, it's, Pareto's law is simple services or signposting people to where they should go if you can't give them support. Then there's a percentage that needs some assistance. So, they still have a need of potentially a single service that might need a little guidance, a little bit of a risk assessment. And then there's a small percentage that is really complex support. People really wouldn't be able to figure this out on their own. They need the help of the councils or the healthcare professionals to help them deal with multiple agencies or multiple services. And when you think about that, what are we all trying to do? We want to focus our resources on this high value work that's going to deliver the best value to our residents, our customers, our patients. We want to help people get onto a digital interface and working with us in a digital manner through digital channels, but some people need support with that. So we're trying to create capacity to actually help people that need that little bit of extra support or may not be comfortable with the digital channels, to give them that assistance. Which means that the really sweet spot for much of our automation is in the larger volume of low complexity transaction, whether you call it digital first, online self-help, or automated service provision. It's really getting customers to take care of the more straightforward transactions themselves, not just so that we can reduce the cost of operations, but really for the higher value, freeing our resources, our teams, to support the high value work that just patients and residents can't do with themselves, and to help people with that digital inclusion. Where we really get a gold star is where we can do that without changing existing IT systems, because there's a lot of antiquated software that's been around for a while. We all know that, or I assume most of you know, that replacement of systems is usually the most complex and riskiest of IT projects. So we look at the components of an automated provisioning system. We may have customers coming in through digital interfaces, chatbots, website, social media. They might be coming in through more traditional call centers, walking into our office, or posting something through the mail. Whichever way they come in, someone within our organizations needs to deal with those requests that are coming through. The traditional manner is staff. So whether it's an online form that generates a PDF that somebody has to pick up and index and then process, or generates an email, or potentially generates an interface into one of the back-end systems and produces an action in a workflow, somebody's got to go in and actually perform the work that's being requested. An alternative is using robotics, robotic process automation, and or artificial intelligence. So there are opportunities where you can replace some of the work that's being done by staff today with some automation. And where it works really well is when it can work with the types of systems that you have already. You know, revenue and benefit systems, if you're in local council, or housing systems, social care systems. I've got a few examples there, you know, Liquid Logic, Mosaic, Orchid, what have you. And if you're in healthcare, maybe patient care systems such as EMS. When we're talking about automated provisioning solutions, we're focusing on solutions that can be implemented quickly. We're talking weeks, not months, that can be layered over top of what you have today, that doesn't require any new interfaces, doesn't require any rework of your existing IT systems. So it's actually an overlay over what you have already, and very quick and easy to provide. So we'll be focusing in today's session on chatbots, robots, artificial intelligence, and how they can work together to give a seamless customer journey for your residents or patients. So with that as setting the scene, I'm going to hand over to Linda, who's going to talk us a little bit about their RPA journey.
Just remembered to unmute myself, Keith. I think that is the term of 2020. You're on mute. Yeah, so I'm here to talk a bit about our RPA program and the benefits that you can quickly realise. And next slide, please. I thought the best thing to do, first of all, was to talk to you a little bit about who is Decorum, because quite often no one's actually heard of us. Decorum's actually a Roman name, and it's an area that is stretching from Hemel Hempstead and links into not far from St Albans. But the area itself, in terms of the council, is Hemel Hempstead is by far and away our biggest town. And then we have places like Berkhamsted and Tring, and then lots of villages as well in the area. There's quite a bit of green belt, as well as being quite comfortable towns, etc., for commuting into London. Thank you. So one of the things that is important to set the context for why we were looking and are continuing to look at RPA, and that's the challenges that we're facing. There is a constant need to improve the productivity of existing resource, as I'm sure a lot of you are well aware, is the increasing pressures on budgets, and that's been compounded by the impact of COVID again on budgets, where we have a mounting demand for services and a reducing amount of money to spend on the provision of those services. So we need to improve productivity. We knew that services were likely to increase before COVID, but I've said there we predict a tsunami. It isn't a prediction, it is an actual tsunami of demand. We've seen massive increases in things like homelessness presentation, requests for all of the grant funding that's got to be processed, etc. Within a council environment, it's important to prove technology before they'll actually go ahead and make a major investment. That's value for money, etc., is always core to our purpose. So what we wanted to do is make sure that we looked at new ways of working, But what we were going to do is to focus on a set of core technologies across the whole council rather than each of the services doing their own thing. So that's why the RPA programme has been delivered centrally. So how have we gone about it? We ran a competitive tender for a partner, and I'm happy to say that Abouttmpact was successful in that. We worked together with them to identify a couple of proof of concept projects, and that was done through workshops in that weird time when you actually got into a room with real people rather than doing it through Teams, and it helped raise the awareness as well as identify the projects we wanted to move forward with. In actual fact, we delivered 3 proof of concept projects, and 2 have been put into production. We've looked at a range of benefits, and also it's a platform for us to then now consider what other processes we might consider for this approach. So just to give you an idea of what we've done, the first RPA that we've looked at that's now gone live, we use a document management system called Information at Work. It's in this setting, it's used across the council, but in particular this was for our regulatory services and in particular environmental services. And as you can well imagine, they are so swamped at the moment because a lot of the track and traces that is being done is through them, as well as all the other normal things that they have to do. And the document management system, although thorough, does actually take a lot of time to load casework into various case folders. And what people were finding is that they were moving on, working on multiple cases at the same time, and they weren't keeping up with the documentation being basically sent to the right particular place. Whereas this robot allows that to be done in the background, and what we're getting there is better quality information, which is critical for when there are case reviews, etc. But also it just means that the productivity of people have improved because they're not having to sit and post documents into the document management system. As you can see there, the number of 650 hours is crucial because that's real productivity, because I'm sure for those of you in local authorities know that there is a national shortage of environmental health officers. So anything to make the ones that we've got more productive is very, very helpful. The second one that has gone live, we moved about 2 years ago into a new building called the Forum, which was great, and it encouraged us to go paper light, etc. So a lot of our paper records for housing were held on microfiche, and we hadn't actually got the microfiche loaded into our housing system, Orchard. That was causing problems because some of our tenants have been with us for quite a long time, so their records weren't complete. So we managed to use RPA to actually load that information into the housing system, and already we're seeing benefit of that because there's data there that wasn't there before. And then the other one that we did was in relation to invoice coding and allocation of invoices according to cost centres, etc. for utility bills. In the end, we decided not to go ahead with that, just simply because it didn't really appear to be sort of worthwhile. The volumes that we anticipated weren't there, so that's why that one has not as yet gone live. So if we go to the next slide, please. So in terms of learnings for you, I can definitely say that RPA is a really good way to take waste out of processes and systems. It's a way in which you can free up valuable time for officers, which is critical at the moment. By centralising the pilot of it, what we had was we used some reserve money so that no one service had to foot the bill for everybody else. So I think that helped. The proof of concept is again an important step to show that with a relatively small amount of investment you can actually get something up and running quite quickly. What we're now in the process of doing is reviewing the long list of potential processes, but we're now doing it in light of response to COVID. The one that we're considering most at the moment is how we will potentially use a robot to help manage our compliance certificates. There's the new building safety bill that I'm sure some of you will be aware of, where you have to be able to provide certification on things like gas, electric, etc., asbestos, and that's all coming in post the Grenfell tragedy. So we've got all of that information, but finding it and making it available to residents can be time consuming. So that's where we're hoping to see how this might help. What would we have done differently? Maybe it could have been good to have an allocated budget up front, but actually in the end, by having to go through the scrutiny and cabinet, it enabled us to engage our members in the process of what we're doing. So that's actually been quite helpful anyway. But overall, a really useful thing and a great way to get some benefits into the council.
My turn to be slow on the mute button. Thanks, Linda. That was brilliant. It's a really good summary. I wanted to go into the demo now, and as I promised, we're going to run you through the demo very quickly in a video, which we know works, and then I'm going to hand over to Marco, and he's going to run it live. So this little bit of background in a purple box was kindly donated to us by Hounslow Council, who was running a digital fair a couple of weeks ago, and we were one of a short list of companies who were invited to present. And so it tells a story in a day in the life of. And in this situation, in this scenario, it's a guy called Brendan. He's been diagnosed with early stage dementia, but Hounslow Council come up with some clever ideas to enable him to continue living at home, which is what he really wants. But his daughter, in our scenario, taking that a little bit further, she notices that his post has got the wrong flat number. He used to just trot down to the common area and pick up his post. Not a real problem. But now that he has dementia, she wants the post to be forwarded on to her, so she wants to get that corrected. Typical call center for a local council has depending on the size of the council, has 300 plus change of address requests. In any organization, the NHS would be facing the same. They typically require 6 to 10 minutes to process, depending on the number of IT systems where they change the address and the conversation with the individual, of course. So, you know, bare bones cost, just looking at unloaded agency salary, that's at least £9,000 a year. But the real cost in change of address is when people make a mistake. Because as humans, it's very hard for us to do mundane tasks and do them repetitively. We're just not wired for it. So simple tasks, quite often we have to do over and over again, are the ones we make the most mistakes with. If it's a complex task, our brains tend to be more engaged. So when agents forget to update one system but forget to update another, all of a sudden we get variance in the addresses that we've got. So we've got a new address on one system, not on the other. It can easily cost 10 times the cost of the labor charges, with the rework that happens, lost letters, payment delays, legal fees, etc. So in our scenario, Brendan's daughter signed in through the website. She's already been authorized, been validated as Brenda because she went through her sign-in credentials. But she's been given a little PIN device, which she needs to input the data, the real-time PIN number that she gets sent into the website as she goes along to prove that she has authority to act for her father. Just before going into demo, I just wanted to set the scene. What we're going to show you is, and we ask you to use your imagination and think a bit broader than what we're showing you, but it's really it's a step toward zero-touch customer experience, where the chatbot chats, the chatbot speaks in very natural language to the customer or the patient or the resident, understands what the customer actually wants, and then kicks off the robot to go and do the work. When the robot finishes, it comes back and gives the status to the chatbot, who continues the conversation. And because the robots are so fast, this is happening in real time. So rather than having to fill a form in, or whether having to sit in a queue and wait on a call center agent, we can have multiple of these chatbots and robots running in parallel and giving a very fast response. So when we look at AI-powered chatbots, we really have the potential to potentially reduce call volumes in half, and to substantially improve first call resolution, particularly for the simple transactions that are very easy to deal with. So I will, here's one I prepared for you earlier. So this is a recording that Marco made a few slides beforehand. So the scenario is Brendan's daughter is going to request a change of address. She's going to be speaking with a Drew chatbot, which is an AI-powered chatbot. And as Drew understands what it requests, it's going to ask the robot to do things. The robot would then access the social care system and the revenue and benefit system and change the address on both of the systems so that they match. What we're hoping we can help you to visualize is a fully automated change of address service. So we've taken humans completely out of this, allow them to focus on those higher value activities. But in the real world, I don't have a copy of Liquid Logic or Northgate Civica. They're quite expensive pieces of software. So we're going to use a proxy. We're going to use Amazon and Argos in their place, but the concepts are exactly the same. So on the left-hand side, you see Google in a little rectangular box. This is a terminal emulator, so it's showing what Marco sees on his mobile device. So we wanted to make it a bit sexy for you. He's going to use his mobile phone to go in and access the TImpact website. From there, click a link, which starts up the chatbot, and all the conversation is happening via his mobile. On the right-hand side is the rest of his desktop. The blue box with a gold bar we've superimposed with the video just as a little subscript for you. And in the orange and white box is actually showing you what's happening with the robot. We name our unattended robot Hector. So it's the work that Hector's actually doing. So there he's opened up a link and he's typing away, chatting with the chatbot. And I've watched Marco do this. He could phrase that any number of ways and it still understands. So it doesn't need to be taught every single variation. So here's the first time. I don't know if you saw the orange square pop up. This is the first time it's triggered a robot. So she's put in her PIN number. The robot's been called. It's looked that PIN number up in a database, and so the chatbot, nope, that's not right. So the chatbot carries on the conversation. She's now entered 6691, which I happen to know is a correct PIN number. So the robot's triggered, the robot looks it up, finds that it's correct, and replies back. And the chatbot's now asking for the postcode, and the robot's gone away and pulled up all the valid addresses. And the chatbot's presenting it as a pick list. And so we just confirmed that they confirm you, okay, this is the address we're going to change. We're going to change it now. Are you happy for me to change the address? So we've got affirmation, and it's turned over to the robot who is now on the Argos website. So you can see it's changing all of the data. It's not picking and choosing. Every single bit of the address is being updated, and it's being cutting and pasting the data. So there's no chance that there's a transposed character or a data entry error. The data as retrieved from the golden source, which is where they looked up using the postcode, is being entered in. Oh, sorry. While I was talking, it did the Amazon as well. So now the chatbot goes on to ask if you'd like evidence, and when she says yes, we capture the email address. So she's entered Miss Smith, and the robot's being told, please send an email to Miss Smith to give her confirmation that her address has been changed. And you can see Marco's got a proxy set up so he can see her emails, and he's now showing the change of address. So what we showed you there was this is a technology that didn't require any interfaces of APIs. It signs into your IT systems and uses them as your staff would do. It can communicate with up to 40 languages or more than 40 languages, and can also support voice-enabled instructions. It has the potential for aligning your front office and back office technology into a single seamless customer journey, improving first contact resolution. In change of address alone, it could free 36,000 minutes of time for your staff to do more valuable activities. and eliminate expensive mistakes that leads to lost documents, payment delays, legal fees, and can also track and proactively communicate with residents. So with that, I'm going to hand over to Marco, who's now going to run that live, and hopefully it works as well as the video did.
Yes, hi everyone. Let me switch the sharing. Right, so as Keith explained, I have a similar setup but slightly different. So on the right hand side we have the it's an AWS Amazon EC2 instance that's handling our request as we spoke, and on the left hand side I'm again going to use the emulator, but since the recorded demo we have on different channels, so I'll be presenting it using Microsoft Teams, which is a supported channel as well. And also we have included some other languages. In our case, we have Spanish at the moment, but obviously it can be extended to more. I'll use English just for ease of our presentation. As Kate's saying, we could phrase our request in many ways. And oops, sorry, my inventory is a bit. And the training of the chatbot helps to understand most of the context that you would supply for it. So he would give us the next prompt and help us guide through the process, through the procedure. I would also go slightly different to what the original flow was, because there are different reactions that the chatbot will make and help guide you again through the right flow. And you can also converse with it so that you can carry on. And now it will take me again through the same validation that we've seen in the demo, which once it's recorded, it would move on to being processed by the robot, hopefully. The connection is good. As it is the case always with live demos. For some reason the robot doesn't get triggered. I'm sorry about that. There we go. Needed a bit of time. So the robot checks my code and confirms from the database. Okay, and as you can see here from the context, it actually recognized the name that I set for my father, or for the person I'm trying to ask this. So I'll put a postcode, which is what the chatbot is asking me to do. And again, the robot will go on and validate that and present me with a set of options that correspond with that answer. So we'll take one of them, and just the last confirmation before the robot undertakes the work. Oh, sorry. So as you see, when I confirm, the robot takes over, and it would work basically within a secure environment, as you would have any your agents or your council officers work to help make the request or handle the request by the residents. So in our case, obviously the robot is now following in modifying the information as requested. And as it goes, it also makes records. The little waiting on the screen is also to make the screenshots that you will see at the end that you could send to the requester. Similarly with Amazon.
Marco, you're supposed to have your camera on so they can see that you're not typing.
Yes, I was thinking exactly the same thing. And then it would leave the site as it would, so to make sure it's offline. Okay, so it informs me that it has done the change, and then it offers me the option to get the notification. So I will ask for that to be sent to me. I'm going to use my alias in this case as well. And I'll just close here the screen so you can see the robot trigger again. So again, the robot will trigger and connect effectively to an Outlook and then send it from the server, from the robot server. And again, it will inform me that all actions have taken place. So if I move on now to my inbox, you'll notice I have one unread, which is sent by the robot, and I have the record of the change in both systems as we went through. So that concludes the demonstration. Thank you again.
And amazingly, Marco, the address was the one that you gave the robot today.
Yes. Thanks.
Right, so.
You can take over.
Yeah, okay. Right, so Matt, can you see my screen?
I can, yes.
Brilliant. So I'll now hand over to Matt, who's going to talk to us a little bit about artificial intelligence.
Thank you. So, hi everyone. I'm going to talk about how, through starting with RPA and chatbots, as you've seen, we can then also apply additional technologies which allow us to move into more and more complex workflows, and which also allow us to bring back human in the loop for certain activities as well. So to Linda's point, this is all about how do you still retain the ability to focus your people on certain activities where you still do need some of that additional human capability, but in general, what you want to do is automate at scale as much as possible. And that's important because in some of the workloads we deal with, for example, in the healthcare space, many of them we want to automate at very large scale, but there is a high level of fidelity required. And what that means is that even for workloads where you're able to automate a vast majority of the activities, you may still want to put a checkpoint in place or the ability for particular areas to put a human back in as well. But this does mean we can start to look at much more complex array of process flows, and that means going right the way back. It gives us more tools in our toolbox that we can use with RPA. And probably it's worth just sort of mentioning right at the outset, you know, what do we mean when we talk about RPA in cloud? Well, we talk about the use of cloud technology, and you may or may not be familiar with it, but very briefly, cloud is the on-demand delivery of IT resources over the internet. So this is where instead of buying and provisioning your own physical data centers, you access compute power and storage power and databases on an as-needed basis from a cloud provider such as ourselves. And as Marco showed, you can indeed run robotic process automation on cloud, and we'll come back to that. So if we skip on to the next slide, please, what we want to do is, give us a second to refresh. Thank you. So what we're going to talk about today is how you can start with a RPA process, and then you can hand over to these additional services. And so what you're looking at on the screen here are some of the AI services that we have in AWS, and they're able to perform a range of different activities. And one of the ones that we're also going to talk about, and my colleague Nico is with me here today as well, is one called Augmented AI, which is also where you bring the human back into the loop as well. So if we move on to the next slide. So just to touch on what are the different services we could talk about and which are sort of optimized for these type of workflows. Well, we've got the RPA, so the robotic process automation, which can perform those process steps up front, perform the physical extraction of information from a chatbot window, can pull it out of forms, and can then provision that to services. And those services can take a variety of forms, such as the ones we're talking about. So Textract is an AI service that will automatically find text and effectively OCR text and handwriting from scanned documents, and that can be combined with RPA when the RPA is able to pull, for example, non-machine consumable information that needs to then be converted into machine consumable. Comprehend and Comprehend Medical are solutions that actually understand to some degree what is written in the text. So here we're sort of going beyond the chatbot technology and actually applying particular ontologies or particular extractions of particular information. So in the medical context, it's very important. So for example, extracting medical information, pharmaceutical information, things like this. And then lastly, one of the other services we think of in this place is more about recognition. This is actually the identification of people and objects. So again, if you've got an RPA process which is geared around perhaps the provision and pulling in at scale of images, this is actually about then subsequently processing those images. And then the next piece we're going to touch on then is if you have this chain and you're daisy chaining really between technologies now, you've got RPA pulling in, you've got a complex process flow, you might have fields in that you still wish to have a human examine, but only under certain circumstance. This is where you switch to ATI. So over to you, Nico.
Thank you, Matt, for that intro. So what is Amazon Augmented AI, or A2I for short? So this is an AWS service that makes it really easy to build the workflows that are required for human review of machine learning productions. A2I removes all that heavy work that is needed when building human review systems or managing very large number of human reviewers, and it allows organizations to get the best of both worlds. What I mean with this is that you augment the capabilities of your existing workforce instead of just automating a process, combining the power of quick and accurate machine learning predictions together with human operators who are key to handling exceptions or outliers and correct the errors when there's any. So if we move to this slide, and we're going to see a very quick example. So the first step that we have is that we are going to use your RPA software suite of your choosing. Right now, if you look at UiPath on AWS, it works out of the box, and it includes already pre-built integrations with AWS services such as storage, compute, Textract, and also recognition, which are the two services that Matt was talking about in the previously. So after running your automated process, you're going to send the output, let's say scan documents that are combining print and handwritten text to Textract. What this is going to do, this AI service from AWS, is going to not only use OCR to extract all the written words that are in there, but it's also able to understand the structure of your text. And what I mean with this is that if you have a table in your document, it's going to understand what are the key and the values of that table. It's going to extract the columns, and it's going to formulate it in a way that you can later process it much easier. If, for example, you have a form where these values are in very different places, for example, let's say you have a tax form, or you have a medical prescription, or you have any sort of form that you use to sign up people into something within your organization, Textract can automatically detect this key and value and locate it into the form. And recently, we also added the possibility to process handwritten text. Now, once you have all of these predictions that the service has done, you have to make sure if they are correct. So you will have confidence that are attached to each one of these predictions, and you can set up a threshold that is going to define whether you want this prediction to be reviewed or not. So if the prediction is below that certain threshold, you want to call this human in the loop process. And what that is going to do is going to connect all the way from RPA to AI without using lots of new technologies. It's going to focus on the people. And basically, what it's going to provide is a website that your people are going to be able to log in using their own credentials. They will be presented with an user interface that can be tailored to your organization or the use case. And then the people are going to be presented with these predictions that have a very low threshold. They are able to correct them, and then once they submit these corrections, it's going to flow back into your existing business process flow. So if we go to the next slide, we're going to see that this is not only limited to a single pass within your pipeline, but rather you can work in stages. So for example, if you click again, you see that, let's say your first step is to scan the paper docs, right? And then that is going to be sent to Textract, who is going to extract the text. But maybe you want to be extra sure that all the text has been extracted correctly. So you will send these results to a first human workforce who is going to review it. And then once they are okay, it's going to move it to this next service, let's say Comprehend, which is going to extract entities. In the case of a medical prescription, like Matt was saying, let's say it's going to extract the dosage or the medication name or the indication of how this medication should be administered to a person. And then that is going to go to a final review by the humans. So if we go to the next slide, here you're going to see a few links that make it really easy for you to start using A2I. And before I hand it over to Matt, I want to just focus a bit on the last point where it says 70 plus task UI samples, which is basically something that was pre-built for your organization to use in the case of, let's say you have very different processes that you want to do, and for them you can generate a unique user interface. And with this, you can have several things already pre-made. So back to you, Matt.
Thanks, Nico. So hopefully, folks, we've given you a quick sort of tour of how we can now start to think about really tackling a wide range of process flows using these technologies. We've got the scale and the volume that RPA provides and the ability to automate at scale, but then we can combine that in with some AI services to tackle more complex use cases. And then what we can also do is bring into that additional services such as A2I, as we've just talked about, to actually extend even further. So the real breadth of what you can do through automated provisioning, through robotic process automation, it continues to expand. I'll hand back to Keith now. He's going to talk about some ways to get started.
Great job, Matt and Nico. Thanks for that. Just double check that I'm not on mute.
No, so we can hear you.
Thank you. We wanted to close off. It can all sound quite daunting. There's lots of bits and pieces. You can consume and pull these things in as you need. We're moving from an environment where you have to develop solutions to where you're actually just assembling from pre-existing components that you can mix and match to an extent to automate your process. Similar to when your Meccano set you might have got at Christmas when you were a kid. But when you're given so many options, sometimes it gets a bit confusing, as I said. So we put together a package. When I say we, it was Abouttmpact, Amazon Web Service, Cadence Innova, UiPath. We got our heads together and we put together a bundle for you that you can literally just pick off the shelf and get running with. So the first two bundles were aimed at local government. Sorry for those of you who are on healthcare. It's still very relevant for you. Maybe just leave off the first bit. They're pre-built RPA workflows. They include the UiPath platform licenses. They include AWS infrastructure, so it's already the correctly configured infrastructure for the robot license. It's included, so all the robots will run in the cloud. You don't have to get any kit set up from your in-house team. Just have to get them to open up a few firewalls. And then configuration support and service transition packs to make the process your own, ensure that it continues to do what you want as your business continues to grow and evolve, and to deal with the transition from initial pack into a live operation that's really support you through the acceptance, deployment, what have you. So those are there. If of any interest, you can get more details on our website. Karen, when she sends a follow-up afterwards, we'll put a few links in. So with that, we are at the conclusion and we're 4:47. So we're 2 minutes behind where we wanted to be, but I think that's pretty good with the amount of topic that we've covered. And we would love to address any questions and answers that you might have, answer any questions you might have. So Karen, can I turn it back over to you to parcel out any questions?
Sure. So we've had some great questions. Thank you. Just to cover a quick, easy one for me anyway. This recording for the webinar will be made available on demand from tomorrow, and I'll send you all a follow-up email with the link to that, so you'll all get that. There's a couple here for you, Keith. What selection and prioritization criteria is used to select the right processes for RPA?
Oh, that's a great question. And we get asked this a lot. We look at a couple of factors. First and foremost, we look at, is there going to be value in this? That isn't always financial. We try and look at value in a broad sense, but what we're really looking at is to do a first pass return on investment, supported with some unquantified benefits. We've been doing some work, some pure process redesign work for Torbay Council as an example, and looking at financial hardship. And even though there's not a good return on investment, there's a really strong case for making some of the investments that they're thinking about to improve their process. So return on investment is the first. Does it make sense to do it? The second is it suitable for the technology that you're thinking about? So, you might want to automate something, but it may not be the best candidate for a chatbot or an RPA or a workflow or an AI. Between those four, you can turn your hand to quite a few, particularly process automation, but they're tools. They're not suited for every single purpose. So suitability is the second. Third is change appetite. If we're going in and trying to do, when we were working with Decorum, there were some great ideas about improvements in housing, but they were launching a new housing system and the guys were flat out. There was no way that we were going to get any time from them to explain the process and to show us what they do, and enable us to build a solution that helps them. So if the team, it doesn't have an appetite for the change, trying to force it through that team is a thankless task. And the final is complexity. You can support some incredibly complex use cases, but you probably don't want to do an incredibly complex one for your first. You want to walk before you run. You want to prove the technology. All the components we've shown you are well proven. They're working with hundreds of thousands of sites, not just in the UK, but around the world. But you want to prove that it works in your environment. And of course, when you ever launch anything new like this, the first operational error that occurs anywhere in the firm, they're going to say, oh, it's that robot, oh, it's that AI, oh, it's that chatbot. So you want to give some time for people to get used to the technology and to be comfortable with it. So build in a couple of, beefy enough to give you a return, but not so complex that it's really going to be difficult to diagnose and support. So the complexity element is quite important as part of your change management strategy.
Thank you. I have another one for you, Keith, before I pass over to Matt. What are the main reasons RPA initiatives fail?
Oh, good question. A lot of the main reasons they fail are similar to the main reasons that other IT projects fail. Insufficient sponsorship, misunderstanding of not having a clear definition of goals, misalignment between the delivery team and what the business actually needs. We were speaking, I won't name the council, but we were speaking to a council a few weeks ago, and they were very frustrated because their internal IT team refused to take help in this instance and wanted to do it themselves. But they were delivering solutions that were so simple. They didn't deal with real life scenarios. They weren't operationally mature. They fell over every time something other than the most simple business case was run through them. And that's the type of thing we see really often. Not enough time and effort spent understanding the real life environment, understanding the process step by step, understanding all of the exceptions that occur before rushing in to build. because rushing is built. Building robots is fun. It's sexy. We all want to get to that. But you got to do the hard work of really understanding the service that you're looking to automate before you start the build. So the top failures: sponsorship, insufficient budget or resourcing, misunderstanding what the tool should be used for, not clear alignment between, not building a solution that's actually fit for purpose. So not a million miles different from a traditional IT project.
Thank you. A couple for Matt and Nico. You may know the answer to this, you guys, you may not. Are AWS on GCloud?
Yes, so we've just popped a couple of answers in the text. We're on GCloud 11. The other piece to bear in mind there is we have just also entered into a new agreement with the government called the One Government Value Agreement, which is with the Crown Commercial Service, which is effectively a memorandum of understanding to help public sector UK get scale value from AWS. So I've dropped the link into the chat. I don't know if that's visible to everyone, but we can provide it. So there's plenty of help and support on that and how to access that through GCloud.
Thank you. And another one for you, Matt. What sort of workloads combine AI and RPA?
Yeah, so the ones, I mean, any sort can in principle. What in my world, which is healthcare, it's obviously the ones that are more complex, but you still need the RPA steps. So something we find in healthcare a lot is there's quite a lot of legacy technology, and so you need to be able to put a bridge between that legacy technology and for example a cloud or a server, and RPA gives you that. It gives you the ability to go into a desktop and actually pull the right information out of a record, say a healthcare record, and then provision that to a web service. So an example of this that I've worked on in the past has been triaging technologies. So early stage paper-based referral triage, where you get a unstructured doctor's note, say, that then gets scraped out of a system using RPA and then gets served up to a predictive model, which is built with machine learning. And you need to combine both the RPA and the AI model to get the whole workflow. Otherwise, what you tend to get is you get a world where you can build these beautiful machine learning models, but you have no way to actually get the data to them. And equally, you're in a world where sometimes the RPA can be brittle because you can't combine it with machine learning. So it's those use cases where bringing the two worlds together is powerful, and where the technology means you need to use RPA to bridge.
Thanks, Matt. Back to Keith. So someone looks amazing, and you said it works with any IT system. But how would that robot access specific systems, and would they need to build interfaces?
Good question. We built robots for HSBC that access 30-year-old AS400 machines that were just green screen. We built robots that access the latest websites. We've accessed, a fair percentage of the key systems that you use in local government, and quite a few in healthcare. The way the robots work is that they've got, if there is an interface, the robot can consume it. But they don't require an interface. So a robot will typically use the same user interface as a user uses. It can also consume a scanned document, a PDF, an email, a spreadsheet. So we can interact with any of those. So we quite often have a robot opening up spreadsheets, writing data to the spreadsheet, putting it into a format that can then be used by humans, and delivering it somewhere, particularly for like tracking information as you go through. The way robots work is 20 years ago, robots were kind of very simplistic. They weren't called robots then, they had other names, but it was screen scraping, to use the vulgar term of the day. You would go 3.5 inches down from the top, 2.5 inches to the right, read the data that's in this quadrant, and then you would take that data and try and translate it into a digital text. So they call it reading on the glass. You didn't know what was there. You were just taking pictures effectively of bits on the screen and having to translate that into text. modern, and we can still do that. And that's how we deal with really old systems like green screens or virtualized data, where it isn't really data, just a picture of data. But with any modern system, we generally read, they call it read through the glass. So you're actually reading the code behind the system. So the robot's actually reading the data labels. So if you move the data fields around, or if you change the labels on the screen, it doesn't really affect the robot as long as it's still on the same screen, because it knows once I choose this menu item, I read the code behind it, and I determine what I'm looking for this data variable. As long as the developer hasn't renamed that data variable, I can find it. So going into a little bit of detail, but to answer the question, can access most any systems. We just use different techniques for it, but not just IT systems, also scanned images, emails, your office products, websites, can send text messages and receive text messages as well. Maybe just one word on what Matt was saying before. I think Matt described it very eloquently. We use a phrase that the robot's the hands, the artificial intelligence is the brains. And they really are designed to be very complementary. The UiPath suite, which we tend to use most often, is fully integrated in with all the major artificial intelligence platforms, and particularly well integrated in with the AWS AI platform. So we're looking at more and more scenarios where we can bring UiPath, AWS machine learning together to deliver huge benefits.
Right, we've got 1 more minute left, so I'm going to squeeze one more in. Can the solution support any social media channels?
Is that for me, Karen?
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, so the chatbot we showed here out of the box supports WhatsApp, Facebook. We can support virtually any social media channel for the chatbots in the RPA, and then the chatbots in the RPA being the hands or the bridge, as Matt said, can bridge into the AI solution. So the components work very well with social media interfaces.
Great.
If I can add just on the last one, I think there are a few areas, for example, if we're talking WhatsApp and other channels like that, you need to, there are some licensing implication in some scenarios, so those need to be considered as well.
Oh yeah, so for just pick up what Marco says, if you use WhatsApp for your business, you have to get a WhatsApp business license. So that's just a consideration you want to remember.
Okay, well that's on the hour. Thank you very much, everybody that's attending. I'll follow up with the recording and some more details, and stay safe, and thanks for attending.
Thanks everyone, goodbye.